conferences, conventions, and big special events because this is where people are doing fundraisers and things like that. And so over the years, my skills have grown. And then in the early 2000s, I migrated to the television industry. So I found my way back. So, I can at least say I worked in my major for a little while. And I went to that to be more of an educator because I decided I wanted to work more in programming. And then when my bosses realized that I had an event planning skills, it's one of those like The Godfather, just when you get out, they pull you back in. They asked me to plan all their VIP events. So I spent 6 years planning a lot of high-end events for television networks, cable networks, and TV talent, which was a great way to segment into working for brides, because I was used to taking care of emotional people and people who think that, people are a little bit selfish and people who think that everything revolves around them. So that care and feeding skill was built as a result of all of that. And then I had moved to the corporate side. So I worked for a corporation as a corporate event planner. And the last recession, there was that whole real estate bust that happened around 2006, 2007. And I lost my job, and I had only been there 6 months. So it was hard to find another one. So that's how I started my business. Over those years, I've honed my skills because I used to work in what we call in the conference planning world, citywides. So my conventions, the conventions I worked on were about 10,000 to 30,000 people. And so you have to be pretty precise when you're working on events that large. So I would be in you guys is a lot of your neck of the woods because Atlanta has a very large convention center. But I brought a lot of my corporate event planning skills into the wedding world because it wasn't actually as prevalent for me when I first started working in weddings, which was in 2007. But as Instagram grew and I would be looking at pictures and I would be like, why hasn't anybody told that girl that that room is set horribly? How are those guests, and it was starting to drive me crazy. Actually, the Golden Globes to me is the biggest example of a poorly run event. I even think their virtual event sucked, but their in-person event, if you've ever paid attention, the people would have to shimmy between the tables because the room was set too tight, or they had too many people at a table, so people would fan out. And it killed me that nobody cleaned off their tables before their award ceremony began. So, and then those are foundational skills that wedding and event planners should have. And I would always, every year I'd watch the Golden Globes. I'm like, somebody making a whole bunch of money doing this in a horrible manner. But Instagram would really bring it to my attention. Tables wouldn't be set properly. And if you talk to any magazine editor or website editor, they will turn the prettiest wedding down because the table isn't set properly. And I'm the one, sorry if I've ever written any of y'all, but if I see your picture on Instagram, I'm sending you a DM. Hey baby, that picture is pretty, but your table's not set properly. And it's not that I'm trying to be a pain, but that's a skill we should have. We should know how to do that. When you walk into a room, some venues, especially right now in COVID, and I don't know if you guys are dealing with that, they will flat out lie to you about how many people can fit in that room. And then you go back and tell your client that information, and the next thing you know, that room is too tight. They're blaming you. They're not blaming the venue. And in the end, your wedding clients and their wedding is all about the experience. And I'm sure, I know I've been to one where you've been to a wedding where you and the person behind you can't stand up at the same time because the tables are too tight. And that's just because somebody didn't understand how to properly space plan their room. That before you get to all that gorgeous stuff on top of the table, you gotta be able to figure out, how can this room work for me? So in 2011, I did a bus tour. And it's funny because it kicked off in July in Atlanta, but it was 26 states, 52 cities. And I would have to, and I would get a request to plan an event about 2 days out. So we had to be really fast. And I would reach out to event planners in every city I went to during that bus tour saying, hey, I'm coming to your city. I need a little help. We're on our way. Can you get me this or that? And I realized that a lot of people, again, didn't know, like, they're really good. And this was pre-Instagram. So I was meeting some of these people I met on Twitter, but they didn't know the foundation. So I started creating little checklists. All right, we'll go in there, and I need you to go in there and ask them this and this. And these are experienced planners. Or this is how, because if you're working in a tent, nobody's going to be able to tell you the capacity right off the bat. You have to know, okay, if I have a 60 by 60 tent, I can fit this many people in it. So I started creating checklists, and as a result, I had all these checklists and guides for all of your wedding and event planning. And I had uploaded them onto my site because they were a part of my blog post, but they were also available for our month of clients. And about 5 years ago, I got a lot of hits that I saw on Google Analytics to my site from Reddit. And I kept thinking, why is Reddit sending all these people to me? And it was where there's this group chatting, and they were planning a wedding. And somebody said, this website is the best resource, talking about mine, for all these details. And they were like, can you believe she doesn't charge for this stuff? And I was like, that's it. Let me shut this baby down. Because it was these, you could just read all the comments and people are like, yeah, download it. She doesn't even ask for your email address. And I'm feeling like the knucklehead. Like, I'm just giving this stuff away and I'm getting nothing in return for it. I wasn't even getting email addresses. So at first, what I started doing was asking people for email addresses. And then eventually I took all those blog posts and guides and started making books out of them. So that's how we got to where, with the Enlightened Creative. The Perfect Fit has always been on my list as a resource, because I would see the rental companies put out one for linen, and most of the time they were right, but then you would hit one company, and I know it's for sales purposes, it wasn't right. And to me, nothing's uglier than linen that doesn't hit the floor. Like, if it's halfway, well, no, I take it back. Wrinkled linen that doesn't hit the floor is really bad. But linen that just doesn't hit the floor, it makes me sad. And because we do have linen that will come to the floor. And what's funny? I made a purpose. I made a point of bringing this out. Downy's wrinkle releaser works like a charm. I should get money for how many times I tell people this. But if you don't have a steamer, you can just, how they use it for your t-shirts? You can just spray it and smooth it. Well, most of the time, if you have a nice heavy linen from a linen company, you don't have those wrinkles because it's nice heavy material. But sometimes you have clients and they want you to trim, the budget or cut corners, and you end up using that thinner linen. And that's where you're going to see all the 500 creases in it. You can use that stuff and just smooth it out. And it gets all those. And when you and that is another separator. If you really want some weddings that hit a magazine, if your linen is wrinkled, they're not going to take it. So that's another thing you want to do. You don't have to, the funniest thing is I always tell people, you don't have to worry about ironing or steaming the top of the table because you're going to put the stuff on it, but in front of it, you want to make sure, or in the size, anything where the camera's going to hit, you want to make sure that, that you have something that presents you well. So, but going back to the linen sizes, I started saying, at least I know what I put out is going to be accurate, and that I feel good about the information I put out there. things like the dance floor. You know, people now have these ridiculously large dance floors because you have a dance floor wrap, and but your dance floor, it can be prohibitive to people dancing, because if you only have 3 couples and that dance floor is so big, people aren't going out there. Even the most outgoing people are going to be like, I don't know, I'm going to be on display. So the book includes that little thing about, the chart about dance floors. The other thing is, if you haven't worked in a private home wedding, that's a whole different job by itself. The tenting, how many bathrooms you need, your water source, your generators, your lighting, all of that, because now you are basically building a venue from scratch. And hopefully you'll be able to use, the funniest thing is the water source chart didn't make it in there because I was told I was headed down a rabbit hole. We got to pull back, save some things for later. But those are the generator, the water source, those things are areas, if you don't have the experience, can really stump you when planning events. So the whole game plan of this first one of Perfect Fit was to give people something that they can say, all right, I got what I need to at least go in here and make an educated decision about room sets. And when you go on site visits with a couple, because they're going to ask you questions, and it's good to say, well, just a second. Okay. All right, yep, that'll work. If you're working on doing a design board and you want to put chargers on that table, but you're not right there, that book can help you figure out if those size chargers will work around the table. And and I think I probably say this so much, people are like, okay, we know you don't like the chargers hanging off the side of the table. One of my biggest pet peeves is when you see a little bit of the charger hanging off the side of the table, it's because people didn't get a table wide enough, or they didn't account for how many chargers they need to fit around that table. And so I have big boobs. So I always think that if I sit down at a table with my rack and those chargers are hanging off the side, it's going to be embarrassing when everything flips in front of me. And that's just something that I'm always mindful of. But it could be that you have a guy who has a bit of a belly. It would be the same thing. So you don't want, and that's even a whole separate deal of crisis management, because you can get sued for something like that if people got hurt. But you want to make sure that your table is nice and clean on the edges and there's nothing hanging off. And part of that is just knowing what size table you need. Okay.
I love it, because I love what you say. I love watching Hallmark, and I watch Hallmark all the time, and nothing cringes me more. I'm like enjoying the movie, and there's a scene at a like cocktail party or wedding, and the high boy, the linens are like halfway. I'm like, I know the movie is supposed to be like real life, but you're Hallmark. It's like when I see it on TV, it just, you're right. And there's so many things when you watch, my husband and I watch the Golden Globes. The thing that annoys him is there's nobody at the bottom of the stairs to help women up the stairs. Like that just sends them over the edge. But you're right. Like they're like, to go get their award, they're like shimmying between each other. So I can't even imagine the servers.
Right. I've figured that because they're in Beverly Hills and they probably had a multi-year contract with the Hilton there,
yeah,
that they can't get out of it, or they haven't found someplace, because Hiltons usually have the largest ballrooms,
right.
that they can't find anything else that truly works for them. But I don't know, it just drives me crazy where people shipping through.
It's very, very tight.
Yeah.
You're like, it's the things that you notice and no one else has noticed. People are looking at the fashion. You're like, why is that table still dirty?
That's probably my biggest pet peeve, is that there's still food on some of the tables. Mm-hmm. Like, you got commercial breaks. There's somebody out there. But
and it's funny because I have a wedding at the end of May, and she's a dancer. And so she's doing a surprise performance for the groom after dinner. So I looked at the staff at our, we did a pre-walkthrough, and I was like, that table, her estate table, has to be clear, completely clean and clear. They're like, I looked at me, I'm like, I'm not playing, because her background is going to be this beautiful decorated table, yes, but I don't want to have wine glasses and dirty dishes, any of that stuff. Like, clean it off.
Yeah.
And she looked at me, she was like, I didn't even think of that. I was like,
Yeah.
the last thing is like this beautiful dance thing, and everything you're doing, and you have all these dirty tables behind you, this dirty table behind you. So yeah. So now that you told us why you created it, and you actually told us why the best way to use it, like it is so true. And sometimes I even forget. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm like, wait a minute, how many can go on a 72? Or a venue might have a 66, and you're used to a 60. Like, how does that work? So I like it. It's a resource guide. Instead of Googling it, because I in the early years, I would research, and like 3 or 4 different places will have different measurements, different vendors have different measurements, but you also have to, like she said, if the venues, there've been plenty of times a venue says, oh, XYZ fits in here, and I look at the space and I'm like, no, it does not.
Right.
It's just like, no, it does not. Like, you could fit this many. We moved into a small, like a studio, and when we were coming in here to look at the leasing guy was like, oh, you could easily fit 6, and I was like, no. Like 30 people in here seated for a dinner, 3 tables or 4 tables, smaller tables. And Andre Brown was like, what she said. Because you get used to it. You can get used to it. But yeah, you're right. I was something else I saw the other day, that the chargers were hanging off the table. And I was like, oh.
Well, to me, it looks like what I would call a tort waiting to happen, but it's a bit of a liability. And you just take a look. The next time you scroll through Instagram, you're going to see some charges hanging off. You're going to say, gosh, it does look awful. Mm-hmm. And I'm forever sending pictures to my team saying, okay, bad table. I would never, ever, and they know not to share it outside of us, but I just like, this is what not to do.
Yeah.
Because
they did the same thing recently.
If for no other reason, look at it in a selfish manner. Mm-hmm. How do you want to present yourself? Right. You're automatically, your first thought is to take care of the couple, of course, but also look at this as, how are you presenting yourself? How do you want people to see your work? And when you look at it from that way, you'll start to think, I don't know if I want that looking.
And would you say, I mean, that's the thing too, and I think a lot of times when you're a newer planner, or the reality is we're not all extroverts, we're not all like strong type A personalities. Some of us lead quietly, like everyone has different personalities. But I know a lot of times when I've had my team, like, okay, that is, I come in the room and I see things and I'm like, okay, this is what needs to be corrected. They look at me like, I have to go tell the staff. Yes, you have to go tell the caterer with a smile that Irene said. He's like, if you don't even want to say you, just say Irene said that XYZ needs to be changed, please. Yeah. But you have to. Those are the things. It's like, and no one says that you could do it. You have to be nasty, but you have to say this has to look a certain way, because I will tell you, the one who will notice, it's not the bride and groom, because they're like on another cloud. It's a parent, it's a grandma,
it's the auntie. Aunties who will throw you shade, and there's nothing worse than 75-year-old woman shade, because she's really good at it. She'll be gone and you'll be still there, standing there thinking, did she just lay me out? I think she just laid me out.
She sure did. Like, honey, come here real quick. What is wrong with this? What is wrong with this table? But on the other end, they're the ones that praise you when things go really well. So it's not like, they're whatever, but it's one of these things. And sometimes, their staff members, this, honey, like at catering staff, they don't all know exactly how to set a table sometimes.
No. And that's why we have to know.
Right.
We have to be our client's advocate. I will tell you, I've worked on corporate events. I remember sending linen, and it's usually what stumps banquet staff are estate tables, especially if you have extra wide estate tables or extra long ones. So you might need to use 4 table linen. And my belief is, unless I'm doing the wide and skinny with it, if I'm doing one split down the middle, then I will drape every table individually so it's nice and clean. and push them up. And I remember walking into a room and they were like, we don't have enough linen. And I said, what do you mean we don't have enough linen? I know we have enough linen. We should have an extra, because I always order a spare. And they, when I saw how they were setting the tables, setting the linen, I could tell they didn't know quite what to do. So it was clunky. And so I had to have them take it off. And I'm pretty sure they were cursing me out. I just didn't understand what they were saying. And I'm fine with that, because, it won't be the first or last time I got cussed out by somebody. I just need you to do what I want you to do.
Right, exactly.
And my husband calls me the gentle steamroller. That's a compliment with shade in it. I receive that, but it helps me do my job well. Mm-hmm. And that means that I will say, I appreciate all that you've done, but this isn't how I want it done. So I need us to take everything off. And I always say, if you need me to help you, I'll do it. Of course, people will be like, no, I don't want you to help me. Good, because I really want to help anyhow. But we just want to fix it. And so, yes, it takes a skill. It takes experience. It takes time for people to feel comfortable, because sometimes you have to manage up. So these are people that they don't answer to you, or they don't do anything, but every now and then you have to push a little bass in your voice, if you don't have it just yet, to get people to do what you want. I always keep a smile, even if I'm laying you out, but I'm going to give you a smile and say, I realized that time is of the essence. We did a wedding in 2019. I think it was our last one of the year. And color was very important to our bride. Every aspect of that wedding. And I remember that they had the wrong color napkins out. And I remember saying to the venue coordinator, is this the wrong color napkin? No, it isn't. Yes, it is. And so now I got to pull up all our notes that shows, because she was so positive. And she was like, well, we don't have enough time. And I'm like, I have team members. We will help you. And so I remember the bride's brother coming in and saying, people want to sit down. And I'm like, they had the wrong color napkins. As soon as we're finished, we'll let it go. And he goes, does it matter? And I was like, you know your sister? Oh yeah, it matters. Okay. So, because the bottom line is, what you don't want your bride to do is have that face. That face that says, this isn't what I asked for.
Yeah.
You don't want that face, because now she can't get past it. Mm-hmm. So, and it's something as small as a napkin could be it. I would rather us run over 10 minutes and then not have the right stuff.
Absolutely.
Because in the long run, that's what she's going to focus on. And it's a part of how, if we said, this is how it's supposed to be done, because also you're setting the tone. You ever have to come back to that venue? Believe me, they didn't forget. Oh, you're the one with the napkin. Y'all make sure the stuff is right, because you know how she is. I'm fine with that. Because as long as you get what I want you to get, say what you want about me. Right. So, but if you become the pushover, then they will do it again.
And do whatever and give you half service. Not give you full,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. Because I just do it with a smile.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
I do it with a smile, but I understand what you're saying. And I've been in their shoes, and I know I've worked at hotels, I've worked at venues, I understand. Mm-hmm. But this needs to be done, because they're not coming to you. They're going to come to me because I didn't correct it. Yeah. You're right. And that's your job. Like I was telling somebody the other day, Kay, that I said, we work I do the happiest thing. We do the happiest thing for someone on the best day of their life, but we're cynical. Like we work in the what ifs. Like we have this amazing plan, but we're always waiting for the what if. And the what if doesn't happen. It's great. Yeah. But you almost kind of like on like
we're the worst case scenario people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It's kind of, it's a good skill, but sometimes it's awful. To be like, worst case scenario, let's think of plan. And now we have plan B, C, and sometimes D now with everything going on with COVID, and everything we had to learn. But yeah, I like what you're saying. Like, to me, it's like, if you do it to smile, if you do it respectfully, we've offered to help, because sometimes things happen. We've offered to help. But yes, it has to get done. I mean, I've even had it where I go look at the estate table and there's like 2 or 3 different pattern utensils. It's like, really?
So that my first thing there would be like, whatever, just go find another table that has that pattern and match it up that way.
Right.
But it is. And those are the things it is our job. We are our client's advocate. And it is our job to come in there and make sure that that room is set in the best way possible.
Right.
Because
As perfect as possible.
when everything goes well, everybody gets complimented. But when things fall apart, it's the planner's fault. And so it is up to us to be able to, and it's funny how you had said not everybody is outgoing. The very nature of the job, you may not be outgoing, you may be a bit of an introvert, but you have to be the alpha in this scenario. Even if you aren't the most outgoing person, you need to be the alpha. And you need to be the one that people know, all right, she's that person I need to answer to for this. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be a bully,
No.
but people just need to know that that you are a major stakeholder in the success of this event.
That's great advice, because it is true. You have to be in charge. But it's I heard Kathy Romero said this a few weeks ago. She was like, you can't sell what you don't know. But once you know it,
Mm-hmm.
and you stand behind it, and you know you're right, then it's good to you can do it confidently. But you also should always be willing to learn and open to learn, especially if it's a new venue, a new space, a new vendor, a new product. Everything that's going on with COVID. I mean, that's constantly changing. We learned so much this past year on like, I feel like I should be working at the CDC now, like, because all that we learned, or sanitizing experts now, that kind of thing. But I do love that. Like, you have to believe in what you've learned. And if you know it's wrong, or it needs to be corrected, it needs to be corrected. But to me, I've been in this industry a long time, like you don't have to be nasty. Kindness will get you so much. Because even if you're correcting them, but you're doing it with a smile and you're not belittling them or whatever, they'll be annoyed, but they'll still smile at you. My favorite thing is, because my last name is Tyndale, they don't know I speak Spanish. So when they start speaking Spanish, because I ask them to do something and I respond in Spanish, they're like, that's like my ultimate favorite. Or I come to them in Spanish and speak to them in Spanish and get them to do something. They're like, and then the other thing I do is I always, anytime I'm working at a hotel or a place that has set up people, whether, hotels call them housemen, banquet housemen, I always have a few dollars in my pocket.
Amen. I am not above greasing a pocket.
Nope. And the funny, because there's a couple of gentlemen, they're always older gentlemen. I feel like every houseman I've had are like in their later years. Like, and I'm like, how do they have this gentleman as a houseman? But it's okay. But all my housemen, the one at the Four Seasons, he was like, Mrs. Tyndale. I'm like, no. Because you're moving something that they told me they were going to move. The sales team says no. And I'm out here asking you. And he's like, no. And every time they see me, I take really good care of them, and they remember me. And if I ask them to move a pole, they would. In most places, you have to look at the contract. Most places will charge you if you have to reset a room, if something is not right. And I've never, thank God, knock on wood, I've never been charged, because I just do it with a smile. And I take good care of people. So and when you know what you're doing, and then sometimes the event manager or the sales manager is not the best at making diagrams. So you always need to check that. You have to triple check the diagram to the banquet event order or to the event order from the venue to make sure they all marry. Because you'll have some setup people that look at the diagram, and you have some setup people that look at the banquet event order. And some people look at both, and if they don't mix, they're not sending it out.
Yeah.
They're not thinking above and beyond. So what is your advice for your seasons in the industry? What is your advice that you give to new planners? Yeah. Especially in these times that we're in now.
So, and so that's an excellent question. Is it advice related to logistics and space planning, or just overall? Or,
overall.
yeah. So, my biggest thing is that, well, two things. One, I feel like Instagram has killed our creativity. And so I have made a point of stop following my competition. I don't follow them. One, because even OGs like me deal with a little bit of, oh man, she doing that. I'm
Hmm.
not doing, you know, I need to step up my game. And it's hard when living in COVID because we've been without weddings, so I have no content. And then my competition started doing photo shoots, and I'm like, man, I got to do photo shoots. I hate photo shoots. And then I found myself getting caught up in worrying about what everybody else is doing. So you have to get in a practice of thinking about, how can I keep my focus on my own creativity? You look at others for inspiration, but keep your creativity as your own, because the people who really set themselves apart are the people who don't look like everybody else. Because what we've gotten in the habit of with Instagram is looking at what everybody else is doing and then doing a variation of that, and all of our stuff is starting to look the same. And then our clients don't know what our competitive advantages or our differentiator is. So they have no idea why they should hire me over my competition. So the first thing I'd say is just don't spend a lot of time scrolling. You'll drive yourself crazy, and you will never spend time on building that creativity that brought you to this industry. The other thing that I would recommend is making sure, and this is a money thing, and I find this to be so key, is making sure you understand how your cash is flowing, when it's coming in, when it's good, when it's low, because it's times like 2020 that really separated us. I've been doing this full time since 2007. So I have to be mindful of my cash flow, because I'm married to a money guy. And while he is cheering me on and hyping me on, let me tell you, by the fifth of the month, he's like, "You got your money? Where you got you? Have you submitted your paycheck? Have you submitted your pay?" And so and he doesn't. He's worse than a loan shark. Like so I need to come correct with my pay every month. So I have to be mindful of my cash flow. And this year was the first time I really saw the benefit of it, because when COVID hit, I took I think it was about a $65,000 hit um, last April. And I thought, oh Lord, where's that coming from? And and so one of the things that helped is that there is there was a good cash flow in my operating expenses. The other thing that helped me is you gotta always be hungry, always. And it's very easy the higher up you go on the food chain to get comfortable. And you have to always be hungry. That means I spend time, I will tell you, last April, especially once I took that hit, I got on the phone, I call it corporate drunk dialing, where I was on the phone calling everybody I knew, asking them if they knew about potential business coming through. And I will tell you, pride, I had to suck a lot of pride to do that, because I haven't had to do that whole corporate calls, the cold calls, in a long time. But you know what? I like to eat. And so I had to just get on the phone. And so always be hungry, know where your cash flow is coming in, when it's coming in, because we have that, our business is peaks and valleys. So for me, I just give an example. I get big chunks of money in in April, May, and June. And then I live off of that money until, I get wedding stuff, if somebody's paying me monthly, but I live off of that money for the most part until the next spring. So COVID hit right when my money was coming in. That was a sucker. And that's when I ended up losing. So I had to figure out other things to do so that I could be ready. But that meant I had to eat some pride and get on the phone with people and say, hey, I need this. And it's still working. That I got a inquiry today for a big gala because of phone calls I made last spring. So, you never know where your money's going to come from. So don't ignore or let pride stop you from taking advantage of those opportunities. You know what that your grandmas used to say, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. I think that's the saying.
Yep.
And so you have to open your mouth. I mean, I'm big on saying when I see things, or I have called people when if I have a friend whose son plays in the NFL and he just got engaged, I'm like, hey girl, I'm a wedding planner, right? So just want you to know you can pass my stuff on to your son. Let him know how great I am. All right, thanks, bye. But I am not above that. And believe me, the people who are getting paid aren't above it either. And so the people who are doing the big stuff, they're getting on the phone too. And so I'm a big believer of just putting myself out there all of the time. So.
I love that. Because you have to, whether you like sales or not, you're as a business owner, you're constantly selling yourself.
Constantly. To the point, everybody is your client, right? Mm-hmm. So used to be you'd be in traffic, people would annoy me, I'd flip on the bird. I can't do that anymore, right? Because you don't know if that might be a potential client.
That's so true.
I'm thinking about that.
You never know.
Every time I do something, everybody is a potential client. So, and that changed my whole demeanor back in 2007. You'd be like, oh no, you just
never know.
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna let you go, but just your whole demeanor changes because you're always selling, and that's a drag. I hated selling in the beginning. Now it's just a part of what I do.
Yeah, it's a part of your process. It's a part of your you have to.
You don't have to be pushy, right, but you're always thinking money. You're always thinking potential client, and because like I said, you don't know where your money's coming from.
And I always say that every wedding, your next wedding or your next event is in that room. It might not be right away, but it will definitely. From one wedding, I got 2 or 3 other weddings out of them. Yeah. And each wedding was more than the next.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, that's great. So each wedding was more than the next. Yeah, you're so right. You never know. And I've had those instances. You never know who's in the room or who you're in the elevator with.
Right.
On your way somewhere.
Andre Wells taught me that, so that, because I used to be so proud that I could leave early from a wedding because my team is awesome, right, and I could leave. And he was like, that's when the money's being made. He is well dressed, and near the end of the event, he's walking from table to table to introduce himself to people at those tables. And I was like, oh, that feels a little salesy. He's like, I get my best business that way. And that brother works with Patti LaBelle and P. Diddy and all those people. And that a lot of that comes from him shaking hands at the end of the night.
Yeah. Thought, looking put together.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Miss Kay? And her husband's an amazing man. He's just the money man. He's a sweetheart. We all love him.
He is my hype man. And he is a big supporter, of everything I do. But he's also, like I said, he would be the first to tell me, all right, this ain't working if I'm not bringing my pay in. Why are you doing it for free? It's not a profit.
And it's not even to, like my husband says, it's not even to make a dent in the house. It's that I don't want you working for free. Yeah. It's not like, we're gonna not eat if you don't bring a check. I don't want you working and not getting paid.
Oh, see, mine tells me we're not going to eat. So I need to have
Yes, he's
mine.
sweeter. We love him. I think he's like the industry husband. Like
he,
everybody
he
loves
he
him.
he does. He shows up at everything.
Yeah, he
Well,
does.
that's because now we're empty nesters. So he just travels with me and shows up. People are like, "Where's Chris Wooten?" I'm like, I'm the wedding person. Why are you asking about him?"
The minute we see her, or I've done events where she's a speaker and I'm managing speakers. And I'm like, so is Mr. Wooten coming with you? He's like, yes.
Well, he's here,
He's
thinking that he works in the wedding industry.
and everybody
Sometimes.
talks to him and has a good old time chatting with him. So,
Mm-hmm.
does anybody have any questions about the Perfect Fit or the crisis management book that you all
Oh, I
downloaded?
forgot that you got that book too.
I
Yeah.
actually have a question. I think Jennifer and I do raise our hand at the same time, but I do have a question. In the Perfect guidebook, there was a section there regarding tips for bartenders and how you had mentioned that, you know, the jar of the tips that you don't like it, to take it away. How do you handle that? Because I see that everywhere.
Yeah.
Like every wedding, I see it everywhere.
The funniest thing is when I come to, and we've had it where I have said to the venue people, like I'll show up and there's a jar, and I will come to bartender and I'll say, "I told you to put this jar out here," and he's like, "Oh, well, you know, we always do it." I never tell them how to do their job. I go to the banquet captain and say, "Hey, my couple is already planning to tip the banquet staff at the end of the night. This is a wedding. We'd rather you not have the tip jar out." And that usually works just fine. But I will always ask them because I want to know if it was them or the venue first. But that's a conversation. I will tell you, I encourage you to have that with your couple in the beginning. So when I do my couple's wedding budget, there's a line item for gratuity. And I do that because I've had way too many mothers say, "Lord, I've paid everybody enough money. What do you mean I got to come up with tips? I don't have it." Because tips can add up to $600, $700, $800. It depends on whatever wedding you're taking care of. And so you don't want to catch them off guard at the end because you've been taking good care of them all along. So I tell the couple in the beginning when we do the budget, hey, you need a line item to cover at the minimum tips for the banquet staff. Now everything else is their discretion, but you want to because it's either included in the fee or it's not. And if they're planning to tip the staff, then there should be no tip jar for the bartenders. Yeah. It is ugly, isn't it? It's just,
yeah.
it
I see it all the
like
time because I think that all the time because I know, well, they're paying it at the end and then they're double paying because people are paying that. And so I always thought that was a strange thing.
We used to wait tables. We would call that a Cadillac tip. Yeah.
But I also have to check with the venue because sometimes like a contract will say 25%, 28 gratuity, service charge gratuity. And that doesn't necessarily always goes back to the staff. So you
Right.
Especially hotels, that money does not go back to the staff.
No.
The banquet captain gets a percentage, like, and that's how he gets it. Sometimes he gets a salary. But so we always double check, like, is that being split? Some catering companies will split it, but it's a good conversation to have with the venue or the caterer, and then also have it with your couple. And I also noticed that it's based on region. So my northerners always tip. It's automatically like conversation.
That's good.
And it's like 50-50 for my southerners. Like it's just like, well, like they said, I've paid enough, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and understand more than likely a service charge is not a gratuity. No. The service charge is help to clean their uniforms and to cover a bunch of other things, but it's not a gratuity. So you want to make sure it's a gratuity. I mean, we work with some caterers. They're like, we pay our staff well. You don't need to tip us. Yeah. And that's fine. But that's usually the higher end caterers who do that. Others you'll have to come out. But as long as you have that, when you have your final meeting or your final walkthrough with the caterer, you should bring up gratuity and say, or when you're doing that initial conversation, when you're doing budgeting and figuring out how much they're going to cost, you can say, how much of this is tip gratuity? And if they say none, then you can know how to go forward with your couple on that.
Good question.
Yeah.
Is that a question?
I was just wondering if you plan on having the books in a hard copy.
So it's really funny. Uncle Sam is not your friend when you do hard copy books. They tax you differently,
Okay.
but as a matter of fact, that came up. That has come up. Actually, I was on a call with somebody right before I jumped on with you all, who asked me how much more could she pay to just get it in a hard copy. And I said, the whole idea of how to use it was that you would have it on your tablet and then you could save it for each of your weddings and you can scroll through and mark it up as you needed. But that's a conversation I need to have with my accountant about. Seriously, I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but the whole idea of using them as ebooks is because you charge, I pay a different rate, which means the cost of the books would have gone up if I printed them out. But for this book specifically, for Perfect Fit, that's been a very common. All the others, no one has ever asked me that question. But for the Perfect Fit, I get that question a lot. So.
I was scrolling through and I was like, I actually wanted to get more of your books. But I have a whole bunch of kids, and I don't do well reading on computers and on screens and tablets. I'm just not that savvy. And so having loose paper around the house is not a good thing with toddlers.
No, I understand. I'm actually hosting a private workshop here for some people on March 31st, and I'm printing some copies of the book for that private workshop. And I'm saying private because, if I have more than 10, I don't want the COVID police coming after me. But, so no photos, guys. But if depending on how it breaks out, I will definitely let you all know if I have extra copies. Because like I said, no one has ever, and we've had the books now for almost 3 years. No one's ever asked about a hard copy except for this one. And I get it, because this is a book you mark up. But then it's like, I want you to use it over and over again for each wedding. So my thought process is that you wouldn't mark it up, because every wedding is different.
It's a great book. I even thought about just printing it and getting it printing it myself, but I do like the fact that I have it on my phone really quick.
Yeah.
Do it really quick.
Another way that, because what my team does, because I didn't give them a hard copy either, is they put it in a binder.
See, I was thinking about doing that as well.
No, but like I said, that's been on my list. I have a meeting in 2 weeks to talk to my accountant, and I'm bringing that up. But because up until Marilyn is now thinking about, because so many things are electronic, of taxing digital.
I heard that.
Digital courses and digital goods. I'm like, y'all just want to keep a sister down.
It's like they haven't found a way to fully tax planners or people who don't really have a product. It was just service-based businesses. Like, they've been trying to figure out how to tax us differently for years now. Like,
but if that's the case, then I might as well print the books, because if I'm going to get taxed for them electronically, it's just that I would have to reprint them because I have to use a different ISBN number, because there's one ISBN number for ebooks and one ISBN number.
Oh, wow. Good question, though.
Yeah, it is. And I'll definitely let Irene know so she can let you all know.
Thank you.
Any other questions, ladies?
Well, thank you so much for the time. I enjoyed talking to you all.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Our love to Chris. And hopefully we'll be seeing each other soon, if not this year, next year somewhere.
Well, things are starting to look up, right? I feel like George, I'm not going to lie, Florida never closed. Every time I look at it, I'm like,
Florida didn't close.
Miami didn't close. Atlanta didn't close. We're all closed, but y'all didn't close.
No, but I was still careful. But yeah, my husband was like, ma'am.
But thank you. Every photo I see of you guys having events, I'm like, those chairs are not 6 feet apart. What are they doing in Atlanta?
I try my best, but I have had brides that I've had really good clients, but I've had some of my colleagues that are like, our bride doesn't want anybody wearing a mask. And I'm like, no, ma'am, every guest could not wear a mask. We're fully protected.
Yeah. Or as I tell them, I ain't going over a cliff for you. So,
right. I'm not working for you.
if you don't want to wear a mask, then we're going to have a different conversation, because I am not planning a super spreader. You will not have me in the paper. And then they will be saying, I don't know why she did that. No. We're going to go down this together. So no, but it is, hopefully we will all get back together again soon. And considering this is our life depends on it, but Maryland's starting to look up. They just made an announcement. So we're starting to get, we are at 50% capacity now. So that's very exciting.
Good. Especially now that it's getting warmer. That's good.
Yeah. And the numbers are starting to go down, and hopefully more and more people will get vaccinated.
Yes.
I think
today that she's thinking about it. I saw you getting vaccinated. I'm still thinking about it. I'm like, what is it to think about, old lady? You gotta go get yourself vaccinated.
I'm just trying to sneak in and get get one on the sly. And, because at the end of the day, if they've been out all day, then, you can get one of those.
Yeah.
Well, that's from what I understand. I don't want y'all thinking,
there's
hey, jumped in front of the old people. No, I'm just saying that at the end of the day, they might have some left over. I'm trying to get one of those. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we appreciate
Thank you so much.
And I will talk to you soon.
Yes, have a great evening, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.
Yes.
She's a plethora of information. She is such, and her books and stuff are so good. How's everyone doing?
Good.
To go through and talk about, so this week I wanted to have her on to talk about just to kind of chat with us and encourage us. It's very important to know you are your client's advocate. You have to use your strong indoor voice. It's what I always say. Not the outside voice, but just strong indoor voice. For those that are moms, or remember your mom talking to you under through her teeth, that's what you gotta do, with a smile. I tell all my families here when they figure out that I'm not from here, they go, "You're not from here." I'm like, "No, I'm not Southern." They're like, where are you from? I'm like, "I'm from New York originally." And they laugh and they're like, "You've adapted really well." I'm like, "Yes, but on your wedding day, I'm a Yankee." Because it's just what it is. And I tell people that a lot of that comes from hospitality training, the fact that we're hospitable, we're Latin, we love everybody, but I'm still gonna be stern. My husband jokes and says, he used to help me years and years ago when I started doing events, but he says, "I don't ever want to work for you." Because he says, I say please and thank you in the beginning of the day, and then once all the pleasantries are done and we're sitting down having dinner, Irene comes back. Because it's just, we got to get things done. I don't have time to be. I've had people in the past like, "Oh, is she mad?" or like be offended. I'm like, don't be fake offended. Like, it's not about us. It's about getting this done. So the more you know, the better off you will be. So we're going to go ahead and go over timelines. I did upload the timeline that I created into a folder, because I think you all share that with you all. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so this is my this is the timeline that I created for when I did Scandals. Can you guys see it? So this actually was created in and it's so funny that I created this in 2019, and then I put my anniversary date in it for last year, and this year's on a Saturday. So I created this just for fun, because one of my favorite TV shows, of course, is Scandal. And I wanted to create this, but I wanted to kind of go over this really quickly with you all. And then I have another worksheet that I uploaded into the folder that kind of helps you. So remember, we've had the pre-planning meeting with the client, the power planning session. We've gotten all those details. We've asked all those questions. Again, you're re-asking questions to your bride and groom again that you might have already talked about, but you have to know these things. You just do. And the more you do this, the better off you are. And I know a couple of you inside the chat and Slack, we've had conversations about timing and when you should start the day and when you, when you should arrive. This is my rule. If it's a full planning client that's paying good money, that client has you for the entire day. Really, that client has you for the entire weekend. You have to account for that. You have to account for, them working, you're working with them, something happens during the week. Because at the end of the day, just like it says full, you're fully there to help them with every inch of that wedding. They've hired you to help them because either A, they don't have time, or B, they don't know what they're doing, right? So you want to make sure that you are really available. Now, even for my wedding management clients, I'm on from Thursday night till Sunday. The Sunday, I promise you, someone's going to call you for something. Somebody forgot something, somebody lost something, somebody can't find the key for something. I've had people looking for cell phones. I've sent them a text message midday and be like, or like after 11 or 12 and say, I have a whole box of lost and found items, and when you get back from your honeymoon, I'll get it to you. And I've had jackets, one shoe, a purse strap, belts, like all kinds of stuff that I wind up giving to. It's hilarious. It's comical, the stuff that we catch and find. And a lot of times the venue will call and they'll be like, hey, we got a box of stuff for you. Things got left behind, or whatever the case may be. So for the sake of this example, I wanted to kind of go over this and go for it. If your mic is on, can you mute it? Somebody else, because I think there you go. Somebody else. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so what I did was I planned an entire wedding for Olivia and Grant, and Fitzgerald Grant, or Fitz, I should say. And I basically took all my Atlanta crew with me to DC. So that was a fun thing. And then I had my husband review it because he also watched Scandal, so he was able to correct certain things. But I had it here where on Wednesday, the 18th, now, when you do very large weddings or very large events, you tend to have earlier that week, a few days before the event, a few days before the wedding, you tend to have, conferences or big galas, award shows, call it a pre-con, a pre-conference, a pre-convention. They call it a pre-con, right? And typically when you're at a large venue or you're at a hotel and you go to pre-con, the planner goes, the planning team comes with you, your client is there, and there's a beautiful boardroom table with general manager, food and beverage directors, all the players. A lot of times at hotels, you have the housekeeping manager, front desk manager, the engineer, operations person, banquets. You have everybody sitting at the table discussing everything. I've had it where it's been a 30, 40 page timeline and production schedule, and we literally go through that and cross-check everything, look at diagrams, look at everything else. So with this case, since the wedding is so big, it's for the president and Olivia Pope, we decided to do that. So 10 to 2 on that Wednesday, I had have a pre-con meeting with the entire, and I had it, I scheduled, we're hosting the wedding at the Smithsonian Castle in DC. So it was the entire staff of the Smithsonian Castle, the caterers, entertainment. Everybody is present for this, and that's on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, production team arrives. Everybody starts arriving, and then it's a rental invoice for itemized list, basically, right? So of course, tables and chairs, and typically I'll put notes in here if somebody needs to look really quickly. But sometimes with the production schedule, we have a whole nother sheet that tells you everything that's going to be broken down, especially for the larger weddings. So if we have if you have rentals coming in from a rental company and it's not being provided by the designer, you make sure you have an itemized rental list. And then either you always have someone on your team, whether it's you or someone on your team, that is their responsibility to make sure that everything gets checked in. Okay, and that everything looks good. I've had times where things get delivered and the design team opens it up and things are cracked, and before they even touch it and pull it out, they call me over. We take a picture, we make a note, excuse me, in most companies, if they're shipping something to you, they'll send you a couple of extras, but then you want to make sure, let them know this arrived broken, so we're not getting charged for it. But you have to have a really good itemized list of what's being rented so you could cross-reference it, okay? So then that was 12 to 8. That's a full day setup, and this being set up a couple of days beforehand, all right? So this particular wedding, we're also doing the rehearsal dinner. So we, the staff and the production team arrives to do the rehearsal dinner and the decor. Dogwood Catering arrives to begin rehearsal dinner setup. Now, what I will tell you is most caterers will arrive 3 hours prior to the cocktail hour beginning. So that is very normal. A lot of venues will give you anywhere between 2 to 4 hours of setup. So depending on your client's full setup, it's always good to know. So if your client has hired you after they got their venue and you review everything, you have to keep that in mind when the design is put together. I recently had a bride that's getting married this year who we had to add 2 more hours because her to the beginning of the wedding, the beginning of her rental, because her design is so massive. And initially they only had 2 hours. So between so she's like this, she goes, either you add 2 hours to the front end or I have to bring in more staff and charge you. So either way, you up the creek, right? Like either way, you're gonna pay. So you have to be mindful of that. So if they hire you after the fact and you review that before you start making all these plans and all these designs, know that. Some places are generous enough to let you start decorating the day before without charging. Sometimes I've had it where I've literally had to do a buyout for the weekend. Meaning if my wedding was Saturday and we had a huge load in, it's either we are buying out the Friday night, Friday, or we're waiting for that, whatever event they have in the ballroom, whatever room on Friday night. And we've done that. They've, somebody's leaving at 11 and my team is coming in at 1 o'clock to set. I welcome everybody and then I get sent to bed because I'm not good at anybody, but we'll have overnight team. But with that comes a different rate too remember that depending on the Sundays, sometimes people get charged differently. Labor is different, delivery is different on Sundays, and then after midnight as well. So if there's gonna be a late night strike or a late night setup, which they like it. And most of my setup people that has to do pipe, they're doing pipe and drape or lighting or doing something or flooring or do something major, they actually like when no one's in the building. Like it's dead quiet and they can be in there. But it all depends on the venue. So we have catering there, arriving. And again, you have to realize anytime you're doing an event that it's multifaceted, I tell my couples, it's like there's multiple worlds going on. Like on wedding day, you got the bride getting ready, the groom getting ready, and then you have the venue getting ready. And then if you have a reception venue and a ceremony venue, they're separate. There's all these balls in the air at the same time. Now, as a planner and as the lead planner and the owner of your company, you cannot be in all these places at one time. And it's still, all these years later, it's the hardest thing for me to do. Not to be nosy Rosie in every pot, but like knowing that I have people on my team that I trust to manage certain things, or people that I could delegate things to, because depending on my couples, sometimes my couples want me to be side by side with them, not at the reception with them. I've had it where I've had couples getting married at church and like, no, we want you in the church and let Tevin and Rachel take care of the reception setup. So you just have to know that the larger the wedding or the more pieces and the more logistics it's had, the more hands you're gonna need. So you're gonna need to start building your team of either other planners in your area that you could call on to help you and kind of create your own little conglomerate, or start finding assistants that you bring on when needed, and kind of work through the reins with that. So we have the rehearsal at the church because I got married at a church, and then we have a ceremony order below. So that's 5 to 6. I have Orchestra Noir arriving at 5:30 for the rehearsal dinner. So they're doing their sound check and all that stuff there. They could do string quartet. Then rehearsal dinner is at 7, so 7 to 9:30. So we have a cocktail hour, we'll pass hors d'oeuvres and drinks. Guests will be seated, there'll be a welcome, and there'll be a family-style dinner service for dinner, toast and thank yous by the bride and groom. So that's all happening on Thursday, right? And then on Saturday, the wedding, I have here Olivia, the bridesmaid, and Huck meet up. So man of honor is Huck. The bridesmaids are Abby and I can't even see my own little thing at the bottom. Hold on. Abby and Quinn are at that. And 8:30 in the morning, the Four Seasons is going to deliver breakfast to them in the presidential suite. Now, that's another thing. So I tend to, anything that's happening on wedding day, I touch. So I always discuss with my brides, who is someone picking up food for you? Who's bringing food for you? Depending on the clients. My wedding management clients, I typically don't start till 12 or 1 o'clock. So I'm not there with them in the morning. My full planning clients, I'm one of the first things they see in the morning. Even if I'm not in the room with them all day, they see me in the morning because I want them to see me, know that I'm here, know that things are going on, and kind of, smoothing it out and making sure that they know that I'm awake and available to them. Even if it's at a hotel, even if I come down in my cute little loungewear and say, hi, how are you? How's it? Good morning. It's wedding day. Da, 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 da. And I disappear for a little while. They at least see me one time. So then you have the beauty team that arrives to give everybody gets hair and makeup done. And so here's my tips for hair and makeup. Typically, it's about 30 to 40 minutes per service for bridesmaids, right? So hair 30 minutes, makeup 30 minutes. Some hair and makeup artists could do all that in 45 minutes, which is great. Right now, I'm allotting an hour to an hour and 15 minutes per bridesmaid because if they have 45 minutes or so, they need about 10, 15 minutes to disinfect everything, clean everything up, make it back to COVID compliance. And that's that. I will tell you that these makeup artists out here will fight you and tell you no, that you don't need that. And Jennifer's smiling because she probably dealt with this recently. No, I don't know you. If I've never worked with them and don't know their speed of how they do things, I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is what it is. If you're done earlier, great, because then you could just move on. I like to build cushions. I built lots of cushions in there, and the only people who know the cushion is me, especially if it's a group of vendors that I have never worked with before, makeup artists that I have never worked with before. I like to build in cushions. Okay, so I give an hour per bridesmaid's hair and makeup. So then that way it is, there is time to get it done. The bride, on the other hand, needs anywhere from 90 minutes to 2.5 hours for hair and makeup. If she's getting extensions that day, it depends on what she's doing to her hair. A lot of times my brides will if they are getting extensions, whether it's my black brides or my white brides, they're getting them a couple of days beforehand. So it makes it a little bit easier. But some brides want to, have more hair. They want it to be fuller. It'll get done that day. They'll add more days. So I would always talk to the makeup and hair artist to say, how long did it take you for the trial? And let's add a little bit more time to that. So typically the trials last about 2.5 to 3 hours because the makeup artist and the hairstylist are talking to the bride as they're doing things and they're trying things out and looking at photos and looking at her dress and kind of coming up with the whole style that's uniquely her. But then on wedding day, it could be anywhere from 2 hours, like I said, 90 minutes to 2.5 hours. So kind of keep that in mind, okay? So our team arrives. So remember, again, there's a whole world going on there. For my full service weddings, I tend to have a team member at the getting ready location that comes mid-morning. And she comes mid-morning just to make sure that things are on schedule, that no one is behind, that the bride's personal items are starting to get packed to the side. So she's kind of managing the bridal suite. She's also checking in on the groomsmen if before Tevin gets there, and sometimes we'll have our groom's concierge there also for our larger weddings to kind of manage the people because it is a lot, right? So we would typically, our team, depending on what time everything's going to start, how long we have at the venue, we come in 3 or 4 hours before everything starts, sometimes sooner, to set out personal items, to set up personal items like the guest book, the gift table, seating chart, place cards per table. Now, remember, an escort card, you could have either a seating chart or you could have an escort card, which the escort card tells you to get to the table. And then what a place card is an actual place setting on the table. So, old school was that everybody had their assigned table seating at tables, and place cards, was just telling them how to get there. So a lot of times what I do is we'll have a seating chart that tells people what table to go to. And if the bride and groom want them to sit at a specific a chair at that table, we'll do a place card. And place cards are really, really good if you are having a plated meal, a pre-selected plated meal. So remember that. So we'll do that, set up favors, set up all the signage, set up menu cards. The design team sets up that day too, so they're arriving at the venue. The groom and the groomsmen get together and have lunch. I always put this on here, make sure that those boys eat as well. Because a lot of time the groom and the groomsmen are having nice little drinks. So you gotta make sure they get some food in. Chick-fil-A, Subs, they go have lunch somewhere, get some burgers. I don't care, but they need to do something. So his groomsmen are Cyrus, David, and Millie, his groom's lady. Then at 11 o'clock, I have, now sometimes the flowers the bouquets and the boutonnieres don't get delivered early, but a lot of times they do, because this particular wedding, if the wedding is happening at a church, they're either, the personal flowers either get delivered to the hotel or they get delivered to the church. Depending on if there's going to be any pre-photos at the hotel before they leave, they might need their flowers. So then you have to figure that out. So here we have what time the personal flowers are being delivered, where they're being delivered to, and then how many. Because again, if you have a team member or if you have a team member from the design team get there, sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know, right? We have the photographer arriving at 11 o'clock. Then you have production delivering for florals for the ceremony. Now with ceremony, I think I put that in one of my, a few weeks ago, we talked about ceremony and the things that are needed for the ceremony. The biggest thing for a church or a house of worship is to know their policies and the rules and regulations when it comes to decor. Are we allowed to put, hang things on the pews? Are we allowed to put any florals on the altar? Are we allowed to move anything? So just make sure you always ask those questions. So here we have everything being, the decorations and the flowers and everything else being delivered to the church. And then I arrive around noon to check in with the bride and the groom and manage basically their departure, because that's going to be a lot to do, right? So I make sure that that on the schedule is the groom and the groomsmen's schedule as far as them getting dressed. That's on there. And then I always have the bridesmaids get dressed before the bride. If the bride's going to get dressed in her hotel room or in her hotel suite or in her room, I like to have the bridesmaids and her mom fully dressed before she gets dressed, because that makes for better pictures. Because if her maid of honor and her mother are helping her get dressed, the last thing you want is a picture of them helping her get dressed and they're in their like PJ chilling attire. Like, I make everybody get dressed. And not only that, if they're all dressed, dressing her is quick. Because once she gets dressed, there's an additional there's photos that start, and then you guys get ready to leave. So bride's party gets dressed, except for Olivia. Man of honor, Huck, and best man, Cyrus, confirm that they both have the rings. I always make sure that the man of honor, maid of honor, best man, whatever you want to call it, best ladies, but I've had both on both sides. They make sure that they have the other person's rings. Sometimes the bride will have all the rings because a photographer needs them to take detail shots, but you want to make sure that somebody has them and they're being accounted for, right? I have a fanny pack, a leather fanny pack, and there's been times where I stuffed 2 ring boxes in there because I don't trust people. And I never, ever, 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 ever tie wedding rings to a pillow and give it to a little boy. No, it don't happen. Nope. I don't care how old they are. The answer is no. The little fake pillow, the fake rings that comes on it, that's all they get. They don't need nothing else. So the bride puts on her dress, and then the photographer gets some photos taken that. The bride and the bride's party take portraits in the bridal suite and around the hotel. Now, I will tell you this. If both your couple are staying in the same hotel, are getting ready in the same hotel, be really, really mindful and put the charge on the best man and the maid of honor to assist you. Don't let the groom go rogue and be wandering around the building, and you're getting ready to take your bride out to the gardens and you open the elevator door and surprise. Let me tell you something. We find some wood, knock on wood. 24 years of doing weddings and it's never happened to me. But I was at a hotel one day and I was taking my bride. My groom had went ahead. He went to the venue and I was bringing my bride down, and she had a little jumpsuit or whatever. And I had her dress in my hand in the bag, and we were on the elevator, and the elevator opens and another planner friend of mine was getting on the elevator, and she had a wedding too. And she was like, my couple just saw each other because he was in the elevator when he wasn't supposed to. The elevator doors open and she was standing there in her dress. And the couple was one of those, they were cute, funny, like they laughed about it. And I was like, no. So you got to remind people, it's literally like moving the president of the United States of America. Like, you're on the phone. Where are you? Talking to the photographer. Okay, is he positioned for the first look? I'm bringing her down now. Like, those kind of things. So you have to orchestrate that. And that's all we're doing, is moving. We're people movers on wedding day and orchestrating things. And so Olivia, so we have groom and bridal party. They go to the Lincoln Memorial. And then take pictures when they get to the Lincoln Memorial. And then Olivia and the bridal party and her bridal party depart for the Lincoln Memorial also. And they so for a first look, so they position Fitz getting ready, and he's in front of the Lincoln statue. I love this. And they have their first look there with Andre Braun Photography. So 3 p.m., bride and groom in front of the Lincoln statue. They have their first look. Then we add the bridal party. Typically, I actually have a really good conversation with the photographer. That is the only person that I really compare notes with when it comes to my timeline. That's the only person that will dictate a little bit how things get shifted, and also the caterer a little bit too. The DJ just does what they're told. Like, they don't ever really have a say-so in the timeline. I know some people have had issues with DJs in the past. It's not your show. I'm giving you the script and you're following it. That's just what it is, right? I respect what they do, and when the dance floor opens up, it's all theirs, right? But until then, it's not that. So I do about 30 to 40 minutes of bridal portraits of bride and groom. We add the bridal party into that, and then they have that time. Now, typically, I do about anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half for bridal party photos. If we were having family photos as well, we would do the bride and groom, the bridal party, and then at 4 o'clock, we would add the family to it. So just everybody gets half an hour. A lot of our couples who like the idea of a first look do add as many people as they can in the beginning, so that way they don't have to be taking too many pictures afterwards. Okay. So some of the team members arrive. Now, when your couples are doing a first look, it's always good to have somebody with them. So typically, the groom will go with one photographer, and the photographers will set him up outside. Myself, or my lady in waiting, we bring the bride, right? We bring the bride. We set her up for her first look. We don't let 1,001 people come with us. I tell all of them, I got her. She's good. You will see her again soon, like to her family and friends. Sometimes if there's a window, they could peep out the window, but they don't need to come with us because I want them to have an authentic moment, right? So we do that. And then, so we'll have all the pictures. At the same time, the ceremony is being set up for mixing of the wines. Instead of a unity candle or unity stand, they're going to do mixing of the wine. And that's another thing that someone could do. It's something I saw one time, and it was beautiful. It had a beautiful decanter, 2 bottles of wine they mixed to make one wine. Programs, you always want to confirm all the final details with the officiant, the pastor, the rabbi, the priest, whoever it is, the coordinator at the church, or whoever's doing the ceremony. Confer with the ceremony music, make sure all that's ready to go. But at the same time, at 3:00 at the venue, Shutter Booth arrives to set up for the cocktail hour. So they have an electronic guest book, and they also have a 360 photo experience. At 3:30, again, you have a conversation with after you do your power planning session with your couple, and you start calling the vendors to start building your timeline, you call them up and say, how much time do you need to set up? If it's a really tight, if it's a restricted amount of time, say, hey, we can get in at this time. What time do you need to get in? But it's also your job to make sure that you space the vendor's arrival time, because you don't want 4 or 5 vendors showing up at the same time to a tiny loading dock, right? Always want to find out how big their vehicle is, how much stuff they're going to have. And so you have to kind of spread people out, and also find out once they unload where they should move their car to, so they're not leaving their car in the loading dock. Because unfortunately, they're not going to come find the person. The truck could say Jennifer Events on it. They're not going to come for Jennifer. They're going to come Jennifer Rentals. They're not going to come for Jennifer. They're going to come for me, the planner. Like the truck says such and such his name on it. Why don't you go to them? No, they come to the planner to ask you to tell people to move it. So remember that. So Exquisite shows up to set up for the cocktail hour and for the reception. You have the bartending staff and the catering staff starts arriving for that time. And then the wedding party departs at the same time, 4 or 4:30, they depart from the Lincoln Memorial to head over to the Holy City Wedding Chapel. So they go there, they go in that way. It's not that far. And then also, if your couple has readers at the ceremony, whether they're reading a poem, a speech, or they're reading a scripture, they typically all should have a copy. The officiant, the pastor, whatever, will have a copy, but you should always have a copy of all readings and have a copy of the entire ceremony in your binder, printed, because you never know. I literally have had 2 copies of each thing, and I'm always giving something out because somebody forgets. If it's a scripture, it's easy because every church or every location has a Bible, they can use it, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a poem, sometimes it's a whatever, but I have a copy just in case. Because I've had people like, oh no, I left it in the Uber. What's that gonna help us? Right? It's not gonna help us. My mom actually, our pastor had our parents write letters to us, and we were oblivious. We didn't know this. Our parents write letters to us, and he read those letters at the church during our ceremony. And little did I know that my mom left her letter in the limo, and they got it back like right in the nick of time. And my pastor actually said, and this arrived by limo just 15 minutes ago. I was like, oh my Lord, only my mother. Like, that's only my mother, right? So just make sure that you have copies of everything. Providing ceremony readings, officiant is Jake. This is a scandalous wedding. And then a wedding party gets to the chapel around 4:30. The flower girls also gets there. So it's Robin, Quinn's daughter. The ring bearer is Teddy, which is Fitz's little boy. And they get there. I always have the kids come later. They don't come and take pictures with the bridal party unless the bride and groom insist, but it also depends on their age, right? Really be mindful of that, because little kids will have meltdowns in a second, but so will big kids. I've had 10-year-olds not want to walk down the aisle. And if that happens, slightly push them to the side and continue with the processional, because nobody has time for that. It just happens. So the prelude is while the guests are arriving. It's the pre-ceremony parts. Guests are arriving, music played by Orchestra Noir. This program is being distributed by the groomsmen. The groomsmen can give out the programs. Programs can be set on the chair, or and you can have hostess at the door giving out programs. Depends on what you would like. Ushers or the groomsmen will seat guests evenly. That's the formal way to do things if you want to. All seating is open. I always ask my couple, do you want a bride side and a groom side, or do you want it to be where it's open seating as long as the first 2 rows are the first 2 rows are reserved for the family. You could do that. So about 4:50, so 10 minutes or so before walking down the aisle, 15 minutes before walking down the aisle, I start lining the bridal party up, everyone except the bride, of course. So whatever hallway, whatever area, I start gathering people because everyone's either going to the bathroom, popping gum, talking to somebody, and you have to wrangle everybody together. Also check, because a lot of the churches, depending on the church or the synagogue or the temple, they have a coordinator. But one of us are still at the church. So we work at a church here a lot called Christ the King. It's a gorgeous Catholic church. I love working there. And over the years, it's changed. So I remember years and years and years ago, people like rolling their eyes and like hating working there because the ladies were stern. Well, now there's a whole new crop of ladies, and there's a whole new crop of priests. And then there's different levels of priests too. Like there's deacons and all that kind of, like, there's some of them who can get married and some of them can't. It's a whole thing. And now they're like, they welcome the additional help. You know, they're the ones who handle the rehearsal, but I'm there so they see my face. I get the couple there. I get the couple dressed. I manage the photos and anything going on like that. But when it's time to get them to do the processional, they take over, and I kind of assist in the back and make sure they look good. But I also help them. I also help my bride fluff her up, make sure she looks good when they open the doors and she's ready to go. So always build a really good relationship with them, and remember that they're protecting God's house. That's why they're so stern. They're protecting God's house. And I've also had people tell me, I've also had some churches and some House of God tell my brides that I was not welcomed. And I said, how dare she tell me that I'm not welcome in my Father's house? I am coming to your ceremony, to your rehearsal, and I said, I won't come to your walkthrough, so she won't know who I am, but I'll tell my bride what questions to ask and what to confirm. But I'll be at the rehearsal, sitting in the back with the rest of the family, and they have no clue. They have no clue. And I just thought, you can't tell me not to come to the house of God. I'm sorry. It's like, you just can't. My bride's laugh. I'm like, you just cannot. Sorry. So, and I understand because there's people that have come there in the past and have been nasty, and I understand, but I make my presence known. So in your timeline, you could have a whole separate document, but it's good to have these things in your timeline. So there's an order of things, and you're kind of checking off as you go, whether you're checking off physically or mentally, it's on there, it's on your phone. In my timeline, in my production schedule, I add in the ceremony order and all those details in there. So at 4:50 or so, we start lining up the bridal party. But at the same time, again, remember there's multiple things going on. The cake and desserts and all kinds of things are happening over at the Smithsonian, and then the ceremony procession starts. So the bride and the groom have discussed with the DJ, the musicians, their playlist, but I still add that in here. So I always like to know what is the first song being played for the processional, what's the song being played for the bridal, like the bride's entrance, for your exit. And I like to put it in here because, again, things happen. So the lovely age that we live in of Bluetoothing, and God forbid something happened to musicians and they can't make it, you can find it online and play it over the speakers of the church or wherever, and you're good to go, right? So that's saving the day. One of the things that I'm going to invest in this year is like is it Bose? So Bose, I think it's Bose, B-O-S-E. They have these little bullet Bluetooth speakers that are super loud. Like they're just, you're like, okay, they'll do justice. And we've had them up for some outdoor weddings before, and it's good to have something that, just in case, right? So then the ceremony is over at 6. So depending on the church, depending on the service, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's an hour, 15 minutes. Again, you just have to find out with the bride and groom and their officiant, their pastor, how long it's going to be. I've had some weddings that are 15 minutes long, start to finish, in and out. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't even get a chance to like close the doors properly or have a conversation or check on anything once they get down there. So ceremony ends. They recess out, they do the processional, and then wait until the church is clear. So a lot of times, very, very few people do a receiving line anymore. So once, even if it's at the church or at a venue, when they do the recessional, I always find a little room for them to go in to have a moment by themselves. The bridal party follows, the family follows, and then everybody gets invited by the officiant to head to the cocktail hour. If it's in the same area, it's like, oh, go over here to the gardens outside to the right. That's where the cocktail hour is going to be. If it's at the church, the reception, they welcome you at the Four Seasons or the Smithsonian or wherever it's going to be at. And so they got it that. Once the room where the ceremony is happening, the church, the sanctuary is empty, you bring everybody back in for photos. And again, check that contract, especially for a lot of these churches and these synagogues and stuff. Check the contract and see how much time they have. I will tell you, I have some places that you get 20 to 30 minutes after the ceremony to get those family photos in, those big group photos that everybody loves to have. So we always make sure you have your shot list so you know who has to be in those photos, right? So ceremony ends, reception room is fully set and ready to go at 6 o'clock. The marriage license gets signed by the officiant. Now, some couples are okay with the officiant mailing it out for them, and some couples want to mail it themselves. Conversation, make sure you find out who's having it and who's getting it and all that good stuff. Make sure that gets done. So we'll have some post-family photos, bridal party photos, bride and groom photos, moments like that. And then everybody departs for the reception at the Smithsonian Castle. Cocktail hour begins at 7 o'clock. So from 7 to 8:30, we did an extended one. It's a northern wedding. Many, many times they'll have a 90-minute rehearsal. Excuse me, cocktail hour, which is fun because the couple is still taking photos. It's DC. There may be some traffic, on and on and on. So there will be pass hors d'oeuvres, wine and champagne upon arrival. So a lot of times you want to do, if it's a large number of guests, you might want to have some passed beverages or beverages on the bar so that people can grab them. They don't have to stay online. Okay, or the staff can greet them at the door with the wine or the champagne. There's a hotel that's opening up here in Atlanta. They said they're not going to have a front desk. The people are going to, like the front desk agents or the front desk people are going to wander around with tablets and check people in as they walk in. And then you get checked in, like it's kind of like the Apple Store. You get checked in, whatever else. And while you're doing that, they'll bring you a glass of wine or beer, like complimentary. I was like, I'm not even a drinker, and that sounds great. I just like the fact that I don't have to do this whole awkward thing of dropping my bags and all that stuff. Just walk in and get it done. So yeah, so you can have past drinks for that. So then we have the first dance. Now we wanted to do a longer cocktail hour because we wanted to do things a little bit different. So we did a first dance for them early on. They're doing a cake cutting early on. There's a welcome. And then I always put that whoever you want to do the welcome, you could do the welcome, right? And then we'll do so typically what I do is I'll do an hour, cocktail hour is an hour. And then I give about 15, 20 minutes of transition from the cocktail hour to the reception, to the dinner portion. And the reason I do that is because it takes people a minute to transition. And it's kind of like herding cats and 2-year-olds. It's what it is. I tell people it's like herding cats and 2-year-olds, and I've had them both. Like it's just, nobody wants to move. So you want to give yourself a good amount of time to go from one end to the other end, right? So cocktail hour ends, and I realized that something got jibble-jabbled here, so I'll fix it. But typically cocktail hour ends, everybody will go to take their seats. Another good thing that you need to remember is about 10 or 15 minutes before cocktail hour ends is to send your staff around to like pockets of people and say, do you know where you're sitting? Do you know where you're sitting? Did you grab your place card? Do you know what table you're sitting? And the entire staff either needs to have has a master guest list, table seating chart, or on their phones, right? Because sometimes the wife grabs the number, knows what table number is, they didn't tell the husband, they get, they're not together the whole time because he's talking to a friend, whatever else. So just start giving people the idea of, hey, we're going to be opening the door soon for dinner and you need to move over for dinner. So after the cocktail end, everybody goes over to the reception. And you do this whole thing. I just realized this is the one that got jibble-jabbled. But You do that, you do your introductions. So if cocktail hour, let's just say cocktail hour ended at 8 or 8:30, but 8, you could say 8:15 or so, 8:20, you do introductions. And it all depends on how long the introductions are. They could introduce the entire bridal party. They could introduce just the bride and groom. Some very traditional families require you to introduce the parents as well. It's just kind of a conversation you're gonna have, and the DJs will also have with them. Then typically, I like to do as many pleasantries early on so that we're not grabbing people back and forth. So you do your introductions, the bride and groom get introduced, and then they do their first dance. Now, unless the bride and groom are doing a full-on choreographed thing, it does not need to be the whole song. 60 to 90 seconds is good enough to get a chorus, 2 chorus in there, a whole verse, enough for the photographer, the videographer, get pictures, and that's it. Because what happens is after 90 seconds, this is what happens. Guests get, no one's paying attention, right? So you do that. And then typically we say, okay, you do your introduction, you do your first dance, and then you have somebody do a welcome and a grace. And that could be the father of the bride, that could be the bride and groom themselves. The list goes on and on. Like it's kind of up to them. And then dinner service begins after that. And that typically is about an hour. So you have salad, the salad gets served, that gets cleared, and the dinner gets served, that gets cleared. And then I typically like 15 minutes or so after after salads get dropped, I ask the catering staff to serve the vending team that's there. Photographer and DJs and videographers have to eat while the couple is eating. It's just what it is. You will get, some caterers get it, and you will get a pullback. There's been all kinds of conversations about it on Clubhouse, but like, it's ridiculous, right? They're eating while you're eating because nobody wants pictures of themselves eating, right? So then that's how, that's where you do that. And then it's about an hour, about 45 minutes to an hour for dinner service. And then you cut the cake. And typically you could make an announcement. It all depends on the couple. I will tell you that most people are not really paying attention to cake cutting anymore. You might get like a couple of aunties and mommy and grandma will come and pay attention. Everybody else goes, oh, that's so cute. And they keep doing whatever they're doing. So I did it a little bit different. Up north, there actually is, they call it Venetian tables, or basically a dessert station. And so they take a room and they kind of like, every dessert under the sun is in the room, cappuccinos, frappuccinos, everything is there. And then along with the wedding cake. So the wedding cake is really just for show. The wedding cake is really just for show. So then, hold on a second. So then we do wedding dances is what I call. So typically we do the cake cutting, that's pretty quick. We do the wedding dances. We do any speeches and toast. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will have cake cutting. So then what happens is while the toast and speeches are going on after that, so best man, maid of honor, I am not, I personally do not like open mics by this point in the night because people have drank a little bit too much and we never know who's getting up to speak or what people are saying. And so I told my bride and groom, don't worry about that. That's too much. Okay. So then we have wedding dances. So father of the bride dance, groom with his daughter and his son in this particular instances, bride to join in after 60 seconds or so. And then we open the dance floor. And minimum that I like to give my couples is 90 minutes of dancing. So I like to do as many of the pleasantries as possible. So then when that dance floor opens up, the only thing they may have to do is a garter, like the tossing of the garter and the bouquet. And I will tell you that 90% of my couples are not doing it right now, young and old. Very few are doing it, even down here in the South. And that's an old tradition. They're like, I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing it. So that's really good. Okay, so let's see. Last dance, 11:45 or so. Now, I typically do 15, 20 minutes before the actual end of the reception. I tell the DJ to kind of say like it's the last dance, but then go ahead and do like an encore or two. and really like make it upbeat. I tell people, make your last dance song something fun to people go off on a high. Back in the day, people would do it, it was like something slow. I'm like, no, you want people to leave like pumped up. One of my favorite, and as corny as it is actually Last Dance by Donna Summers. And what I love about it is young people know the song because it's an old song people sing a lot. But older people know it and they're smiling, and I always go, oh, you have a good memory, don't you? Like, because you just see it in their faces, like they remember something. I'm making something fun and hyped up. Now, I tend to, at that moment, towards when I know what the real Last Dance song is, towards the end, is if there's sparklers or like glow sticks or like those batons or ribbon wands doing the last dance, my team and I are like, hey, last dance. And like we're passing out, like and we're passing things out while they're dancing. And they're like, oh, confetti, whatever it is, while they're dancing, we're doing it. Because it's kind of giving them that, jolting them to let them know like, hey, we're getting ready to get out of here. And then the DJ kind of helps you get everybody outside. Now, for sparklers exit, anything. At this point, people are a few sheets to the wind, right? Let's just be real. So it's typically you line everybody up, right? So you line everybody up outside. If you're doing sparklers, you light from the middle. You always make sure that your couple gets wedding sparklers that are like the really long ones, like 32 or 36 inches, and they need to be minimum, like I say, the 90 seconds, like they last for 90 seconds. And when we buy those, they're really, really thick. If you haven't purchased those, I'll put the link to the website that we get them from. It's like Superior or something, and they're super cheap and they come really fast. But anytime I'm lighting, I light from the middle, and I light one that's really thick on each side and tell people to start helping each other. And if it's a lot of people, it's multiple of us are out there doing it. My team and I are. And without fail, I'm lighting one, and somebody's like trying to add the lighter in there, and I'm like, no, let me light one, and then I'll help you. But you just have to remember, there's a lot of tipsy people while you're doing this. But then that's it, and then also make sure that you know the venue's sparkler policy, because they might need you to have a sand bucket, a water bucket, or something like that. So you make sure that you have all that. So bride and groom exit, and the sky would light up. This one particular, the sky would light up with fireworks as everybody's leaving. Yay! So because they have that kind of money, right? And then everybody leaves, and then the vendors pack up. And always make sure you know what the drop dead time is to get out. We just found out a venue now that they have, their staffing is being really strict. Like the corporate office is being really strict with their time. And she's like, 1:30 a.m. Everything will be locked, and you're just gonna have to come back tomorrow to get the rest of it. But the possibility the bride might get charged. Right. So be aware of that. And then this particular program, this is Timeline Genius. In this particular program, I just there's ways to put reminders. If there's any venue guides or anything that needs to be in there, can be in there. All the contact information of different venues, vendor, a whole list. There's always have important VIP people's phone numbers and email addresses. Maid of honor, best man, parents, bride and groom. Because if something happens, you need to know. Then you need to contact them and not mess with the bride and groom. But I also will share with you all a timeline. I think I did already. I'm not sure. I can't remember if I did or not. A timeline in here from before that had, it was a Google Doc one. So I'll share that with you if I haven't already. And I'm checking now to see if I did. But one from a Google Doc that actually has it broken down by weekend. And remember the CRM that I shared with you all, I think was it class 1 or 2, that also has a Google Doc one in there. This one's just broken down. So for years and years and years, I think we've only been using Timeline Genius for the past 2 or 3 years. We use a Google Doc for years. And I've even had weddings that are really, really large that initially get started in a Google Doc and then eventually get put into Timeline Genius by one of us. And I will tell you this, the more you work on your timeline on paper, and the more you talk to your client, the more you type it in, the more you remember it in your head. and the less you will need that piece of paper. Like the less and less you'll need this piece of paper, or having on your phone. So we have every document that's needed. Everyone gets emailed a Dropbox. Everybody on my team gets emailed Dropbox with everything that needs to be had. Any kind of papers, any kind of contracts, everything's in there, and the timeline. But then everybody also has, some people like to have the timeline on their phone, some people like to have the timeline on paper. I personally do it where it's smaller and I fold it and I put it in my fanny pack or in my jacket or something like that. And then also in here, I added, for week 5, I put in here a wedding day, what's that called? A wedding day kind of cheat sheet to kind of help you map it out. This kind of gives you some guidelines. It's a little bit older, like one that I've had for a while, but it's a good one to use. Kind of tells you all the things that you need to kind of take into account. You know, if it's a buffet, it's at the 30 minutes for everybody to get through. If it's a plate, it's typically 45 minutes, or those kind of things. And I think in the different guides that we have, it has it in there. So I put that in this week's folder that's in the overall drive that I shared with everybody. Okay. Stop the sharing. Any questions? Oh. Alexis, your auntie got married where?
Christ the King.
Oh, such a pretty church. I love it.
Really is. It's so pretty.
I love it. It's a pretty church. Any questions, ladies? Anybody, somebody, anybody? I know that was a lot, and then we went over a little bit today. But I wanted to kind of go over timelines because that's what is the last class. But we will be going over basically wedding day.
Okay.
I'm starting to upload some things in there and into week 6 folder for you all, like the rehearsal guideline, wedding day time guideline of how to kind of like get ready for the day of wedding day, and then I'll also have like emergency kit stuff in there, a bunch of stuff in there for next week. Okay. Alrighty, and then next week we will be announcing the retreat.
Yay.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, process everything. Definitely. Yes, this is a good one to review. If you have any questions, if you have a timeline of a wedding that's coming up that you want me to review it, let me know. Or if you have any, yes, especially if you have a big wedding, weddings are a little bit different. It has multiple places. For me, the more details, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people are like, oh my gosh, this bride has 12 vendors. I'm like, bring it, let's go. Like, yeah, I'm nosy like that. I like, you know, like I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. But then again, I have people in place to help me out. Yeah, lots of details, Jennifer Wilson. Yep. Details. Don't be too ashamed to find out everything, because it's your job to know it. And if you don't know something and it's a good time to learn too and ask questions of the vendor. Like, really, that's how you do it? Because everybody does it differently. Every hotel does it differently. I mean, there's a standard, but there's always, you'll learn that like, oh, that's how the Four Seasons does it, and that's how the Intercontinental does it. Okay. You know.
Do you have a discount code for Timeline Genius?
No, girl, they don't share that. They don't have that.
Okay.
They don't have an affiliate code. I'll check again. 'Cause I'm always trying to get something for you all, but they're like, no. But I'll see.
I use Aisle Planner and I just don't love it. The timeline.
Planner's timeline.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. It's not easy to move around and manipulate and delete and restructure.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a pain.
And I can't put the addresses on there that I need.
Yeah.
And that's like, that irritates me.
And I pay for it. And that's the only thing. If I could use that, then I wouldn't need Timeline Genius. But we always say if two of them just got married, we would just have a happy union.
Exactly. Like this.
Yeah.
But then I have friends of mine that don't ever use any. They don't use Aisle Planner. They don't use Timeline Genius. They just use their own. They use
Google Docs. I see a lot of people use Google Docs. I just can't. It doesn't work for my brain.
I use a spreadsheet. I use a Google spreadsheet.
The sheets.
Yeah, so it makes it easier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Irene.
Yes, ma'am.
When you on the wedding day, and you have like, the ushers to pass out the program, seating guests, is your team involved with that, or the bride and groom pretty much select who they want to do it?
They select who they want to do it, but I give them direction. We give them,
Okay.
so they tell you, oh, it's gonna be Tommy and Johnny coming. Those are my cousins. Okay, well, tell Johnny and Tommy I need them here 15 to 20 minutes before these ceremony doors open. You
Okay.
can have that conversation, like, are they tend to be late? Okay, well, then tell them 30 minutes before the ceremony. So if the ceremony's at 5, 4:30 the doors open, I need them there at 4:15.
Okay.
Tell them what to do. Here are the programs. Everything's already laid out for them. They just giving them direction of how to do it. Direct them how to do it.
Okay.
Anybody else? No. But I'm always here for you all. So message, send me, I said carrier pigeon if you need to. But if you have any weddings coming up that you're working on timelines and you want me to review them, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a lot today, but it was a great class. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I feel like I learned a
That's
lot.
why it's recorded so that way you could, and I almost I got so into Kay talking. I'm like, wait a minute, I have to hit to record. Yeah,
I enjoyed
She
it.
was.
yeah, yeah.
By the way, I caught up to that video for the one that I missed.
Mhm.
The design one.
Oh my God, I learned. Oh my God, I learned a lot.
Yeah. A lot of people did. I've received a lot of messages. Oh, God bless you. And I don't know if you all saw, but I uploaded her. Did you all see it? She gave a flower guide. I was like, I was floored.
Yes, I got it.
Was.
That's
Yes, that was
perfect. That was
amazing.
perfect.
I was like, girl, this is gorgeous. And she's like, if you have any questions, holler, let her know. She's amazing. But I was like, this is really, because I've seen some that just, this was cute and easy to read and understand.
Very easy to read.
Yeah. So she's coming into her calling and she just doesn't know it. She's fighting it.
Was it this floral reference guide?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really good. Really
Oh my gosh.
pretty.
Yes.
What it is, these tools make you look like a superhero. You're like, listen, I'm not a florist, but I know what flowers are in season, what flower, like, these things. And it's like, oh, okay, because somebody wants peonies in December. You're like, okay, boo, we can get those for you from South America, but it's going to cost you. In season, they're $3.75 to $4.75 a stem. Out of season, they're like $6-7 a piece. Yeah, so yeah.
I really have a question. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's just that my son was texting me and I hate it when people are rude like that. Anyway, so next week, no, I don't like that. I think it's rude when someone is talking and someone is texting, So next week is our last session?
Yep.
God, I am so looking forward to, what am I going to do? I'm going to miss this. Oh my God, I so love this course.
Oh, well,
I do. I learned so much. And
I love
Me
you, but
too.
forever. No. That's why we have the Facebook group. So make sure you guys all sign up. The link is in there. I think only some of you are in there. So make sure we do that because I'm going to continue answer questions, and it's easier to do videos or pop in and do a video really quick to answer somebody's question. There's no way to do it here without give them a bunch of money. Then I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, why can't I upload a video or record a video?
Right.
So wanted to do that too.
It's the Irene page, right? The one that I'm already on.
You on that one, but for this group, I created one called the Wedding.
Every time I click on it, it would never take me anywhere.
Yeah,
Wedding Management Blueprint.
Friend me on Facebook. Friend me on Facebook. Irene Tyndale. Just Facebook. Friend me on Facebook, and then I'll invite you.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
great.
gonna
I have the same problem. When I click on the link, it doesn't come up.
Weird. Okay, so just friend me on Facebook, and then I'll invite you in.
Okay, I want to do that too, because I'm in one of yours, but I don't know if I'm in that group.
I think you're in the inner circle, but this is going to be separate because not everybody gets.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'm so excited, Irene. Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're
And
welcome.
I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Announce the retreat and all the details for that. We had a 2.5-hour call yesterday about it, so I'm really excited.
Wow.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good week. Take it easy. Stay safe and ask questions. Holler at me if you need anything.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.